Welcome back, guys. Sean here with Blue Ridge Silverhound. And I have actually a really good topic. I'm not going to make friends when I do this video, especially from the dealer side. But there's dealers out there that I 100% do not trust. Unfortunately, a couple of those, are regular dealers in my area. That all they do the local show circuit. If you guys are familiar with Peter Macintosh, he's a show organizer here in Northern California, and he does the local Sacramento area Macintosh show. Let this video serve as a warning that you know just because a dealer calls himself a dealer does not mean that they are 100% trustworthy and that you could trust them in a fair deal. Some dealers, especially the ones that do specifically and participate in the show circuit, they don't have a brick and mortar. They run completely out of their house. They travel a lot. They're the ones that you have to worry about the most. There are a number of them that charge way too much money and play off the customers with what they perceive, and I've actually seen this at work, unfortunately, kind of like the naive factor to it all. Because they have that title as being a coin dealer, as in the know-it-alls, right? They're the individuals, the men, the women, that we as collectors, that we lean into for the information, for the fair deal, assuming that they know the market 100%. It couldn't be any more further from the truth. We're going to elaborate a little bit more on that. I wanted to personally talk about one of my experiences here on the most recent Peter Macintosh Club show. The next one, by the way, coming June 1st. Macintosh does about 4 or 5 shows a year. Macintosh himself, he gives me great deals all the time, but I think it's more or less, there are certain coins that I need. A gentleman like Mr. Macintosh, fills that void. So the Macintosh shows are relatively intimate, smaller. They comprise of about, if I had to guess, about maybe 20, 25 dealers. It's a packed room every time the show comes up. And it's like all of the usual people, all of the usual dealers within the area, San Francisco Bay Area, Sacramento, Central Valley. There are folks from, Stockton, Modesto, Fresno that come up to do these shows here in Northern California. So, there's a number of dealers, very trustworthy. I've had a lot of interactions with a lot of dealers. They know me by name. I know them by name. There's even a few of them that are YouTube content creators. One, an extremely high-end dealer that is extremely knowledgeable. And that's the type of guy that if you were going to pull a lot of money out so that way you could buy expensive coins, I'm telling you, it gets real once you hit $1,000 on one coin. If you've never spent $1,000 on one singular coin, you got to make sure that you know your stuff. You know what you want. You know how much they go for in the marketplace. And find someone that's trustworthy. Now, in this day and age, to kind of become a successful dealer, there's a few practices that need to be kind of like mentioned in this. One of which is some sort of e-commerce solution, right? You need to be not only well known in the local community, but how are you going to grow as a dealer? Now, there's a lot of old heads in the hobby as far as the dealer network is concerned. A lot of people that are in their 70s, their 60s, 70s, 80s, and they're maybe, this is their kind of like their dream retirement kind of situation. Those ones kind of scare me a little bit because, they ask for a lot of money for their coins. And I think it's more or less just being around people that enjoy the hobby and less about selling Yeah, they're out there. You're going to find right away that there are people that just really don't care about selling coins. They just want to be at the show, But the ones that are really trying to make it a business, all right, a lot of these older folks, they don't utilize what the online world has to offer. eBay's out there as a great choice to help supplement the show network. Even if you are a traveling dealer, I would say that a good fair amount of your business should be filtered through your websites like eBay or Facebook. There are dealers I know of specifically that work off of Facebook and do really well. Alongside with some of these new live social media auction platforms like Whatnot, eBay Live, things like that. The pool of different ways that you could sell coins and make it a business couldn't be bigger. And the good news is that a good fair amount of these websites that we've leaned onto, they've invested a heavy amount of money to the advertising aspect of it. That's why that if you were going to sell on eBay, there are people that don't want to sell on eBay because of the fees, but you really know what the fees go to, The last time I checked, advertising today is wholly different than it was back, say, in 1995. 1995, if you were going to do some sort of advertising campaign, whether it's like direct mail or doing something in the newspaper, it gets really expensive, okay? And then if you go on radio and TV and you do like local type stuff like that, we could be talking tens of thousands of dollars. Whereas today, the internet has really allowed a lot of what we used to consider some of the most expensive expenses when it comes to launching advertising campaigns to our customers. I'm telling you, today, to spend a little small fee to utilize some of the deepest, most wide bandwidth advertising campaigns compared to what they were back 30 years ago, when a lot of these same expensive advertising campaigns, which by the way still exist, you go to a place like FedEx office, do a direct mail campaign, you end up spending $10,000 or more, and it really doesn't guarantee that you're going to get new clientele from it, which sucks. There's no kind of like A and B test for that. It's not a very good one. I've seen it before. But I find the importance that if you were going to grow and take the business seriously, that you need to be on some sort of e-commerce type of solution, which goes back to our original story, Peter Macintosh show. There's like 2 or 3 dealers, incredibly stubborn, old head style, wildly expensive inventory. And again, I cannot stress this enough. If you were going to be spending a lot of money on your very first, like what is considered high-end coin, you're more than likely going to want to do more research, right? It's the same way as to, remodeling a backyard or getting a new roof on a house or, an engine replacement in your car, right? You're going to call around. You're going to get all the information because there's going to be one person that does it a whole lot better at a fraction of the price, but you got to make sure it's legit. The same way it goes down with coin deals. Again, once you get to that, it's going to be $1,000. I really want to use $500, but $1,000 seems to be that kind of like line drawn in the sand for a lot of people where it becomes real. Now, before your guys' gals' spouses, go up in arms because it's like, oh, my husband just spent $1,000. I'm like, yeah, he spent $1,000 on the coin. You could turn around, sell it, get that same $1,000 back. Sorry, can't say the same about clothes and purses and other menial things like that, right? We can all agree that this particular hobby is a very safe investment all the way around. And in certain cases, a lot of that we do invest in enhances in value over time due to scarcity, rarity, the growth of the hobby, okay, which it's been growing year over year. But one particular dealer that I visit, And I visit his table every time I go to a Macintosh show. I've always stopped to his dealer. I've always had a sit-down conversation with this gentleman, older guy. He's got kind of like platinum hair. We sit there and talk about 20, 30 minutes. Okay? We know of each other. I know of him. He knows of me. He knows I do the YouTube bit. All that great stuff. He knows that I have a voice to the community, which also helps grow nationally. Everything that needs to be said. And I always want to buy a coin from him. There was one specific coin that has been on my wish list. I have like a top 10 wish list. And he just so happens to have the coin. Now, he had the coin over the course of the last 5 Macintosh shows that spans about 12 months. So what does that tell you? You know, without even saying anything else, you know, there's something wrong with it, right? But it's graded. You know, it's a PCGS Mint State 63 1899S Morgan Silver Dollar. You know, there's a few dates within like the early 1900s. 1899S is one of them. 1903S, which is kind of like the big bomb one. And I'm looking for coins that are generally in like kind of like that low mint state grade. Herein lies the problem, is that these particular coins, they just don't exist in that fair amount of numbers where you could have kind of the opportunity to shop around. Now, we're going to use eBay here as an example so that way you guys can see what we're looking at. Mint State 62. He had a Mint State 61 example in an old Annex soapbox holder. So let's put that, let me throw that out there too. His asking price, and he wasn't going to budge on it, $1,500. Every single time we talk, it always kind of like laps my mind that he forgets that we continue to have these conversations about that same damn coin, and he wouldn't budge. And you know what's even funny is that the price changes, but not for the better. You know, it'll be $1,500 one day, it'll be $1,550, $1,600, which, you know, he ratchets it up to a higher level during the fall season when the hobby is like coming back into prominence after, you know, everybody's coming back from summer vacation and stuff. So he's one of those guys. We get to talking. And, you know, I always ask him, like, hey, how's business? You know, because, you know, you really want to know, you know, how's business? And he said, well, you know, it's not too good. I haven't been selling, you know, as much as I want to. I lean very heavily on these club shows that Macintosh and a few others promote. Blah, 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 this and that. And it becomes like an overall pity party. All right. And you as a buyer, okay, these are kind of like one of those big red flags. It's like meeting a girl or a guy for the first time. It's like the one thing they say or do is like red flag, like right out of the gate. And this was one of those red flags that just continuously comes out and haunts the crap out of him. And every time that we have this conversation, you know, I ask him, I'm like, well, aside from doing the club shows, are you doing anything else outside of it to expand on your business? He said, well, no, well, you know, I buy a lot of these coins from like heritage auctions and great collections, you know, under sales. I'm like, well, that's your first problem, is that you're buying everything retail, full retail plus, by buying them on the auction circuit, because the auction circuit's hot right now. People are paying up for all of the rarities, for all of the uncommon coins, you know, for a lot of the key dates. They're paying a lot of money. And here we are. We have a dealer that's paying retail plus, and then is expected to make some sort of profit on the back end when they do these club shows. So they're playing off the naive of guys like him. He wants to find customers that are like him, that don't care about the internet world, that don't care about eBay or whatnot, or great collections or anything like that. They want that gentleman to come on in, walk in the door, and see that this key date coin is sitting right here. All you have to do is drop the money. Okay? And then the older guys, they have a lot of money to spend. So, here we are, you know, we're having this conversation. I'm like, okay, well, did you do what I told you to do last time? And he always forgets that we had this conversation. I'm like, you should probably open up an eBay account, and put and mirror your inventory onto eBay, so that way you have flex. If it sells on eBay, regardless of what you're asking for the coins, then you don't have to worry about selling the same coin at the club shows. Just pull it out of inventory, sell it on eBay, and then kind of like rinse and repeat the process of going out and headhunting for more inventory, however you want to do it. But, you say, well, all that stuff's complicated. I have this, this iPhone that my wife made me buy, because it has these features. And, I'm tired. I don't want to get into doing that. I'm like, well, you see, that's your problem. You're limiting yourself in this business world by not, at the very least, put yourself on social media. If you didn't want to do eBay or whatnot, or he buys from Great Collections and Heritage, but he's never once consigned to those very auction houses. So he doesn't even do consignments to them. I'm like, if your inventory's getting old, go ahead and consign it. Go ahead and sell it. At the very least, get yourself an Instagram or Facebook and just post like the new acquisitions that you've come across. And, there's going to be some hopes that people are going to come in and they're going to reach out to you and try and like work out a deal. There are a few dealers that I personally know of and that you guys know of. Akusha Collectibles weighs very heavily onto the internet world. They do YouTube, they do TikTok and everything like that to sell the coins. And they sell a lot of high-end stuff. So the fact that there's a high-end market that goes through all of these social media platforms that at one point we thought, oh, that's where all the teeny boppers go. Oh, I know, man. Everybody's using it. Business is using it. And everybody is having some sort of success based off of the amount of time and effort that they put into it. If you put no effort at all into these platforms, you're not going to get any return from it, right? It's the time and energy invested is what you're going to get out of it. If you put 0% in, you're going to get 0% out. That's just everything that goes in life. But, he has this Mid-State 61 1899S Morgan dollar for $1,500. Here's a PCGS 1899S Morgan dollar in 62, one grade point higher. I will say that his coin does have a CAC green sticker. So it is graded to the level of what that numerical grade is on the holder. Now we have this one here at $960. Now, green sticker or not, this coin is already $540 better than that Mid-State 61. I even went on my phone. I went on the PCGS app. At the very least, have the PCGS app, right? Go on there and look at the price guide. Now, price guide doesn't really indicate that that's real world market values. These are just baselines. So if I went on my PCGS app, I'm just going to give you guys a general idea of what this coin is in Mid-State 61 in an Annex soapbox, which is just okay. It's not even the old A&A holder with the lamp on the back, the hologram. It's not even that. So I go into CoinFacts on PCGS. I go to that particular coin, 1899S, Mid-State 62 and 61. We're actually going to look at both values. So in 61, $700. $700 for a Mid-State 61 in a PCGS holder. That one's Annex. At 62, $850. Now, depending on kind of like pop counts and all that stuff, certain coins will sell for a little bit higher, a little bit less. Generally, the rarities and like higher grades will command much more of a market. That's why this one right here is $110 over what the PCGS price guide value is that it's a tough date. And it's even more tougher in Mid-State, But here's a 64 grade. I could get a 64 1899S for $1,300 today. And that's still $200 less than what his annex soapbox is. So his system is really broken here. I mean, I hope you guys are realizing just how much of a huge miss this is for him. And it also highlights another thing that is quite detrimental to any dealer, is that when people know and they figured you out, word will spread. And that's exactly what happened at these shows, the Peter Macintosh shows. I'm talking to other dealers because there are a lot of occasions where dealers go to other dealers to do trades and to make deals. They always identify the old heads in the house who are way too stingy and are asking way too much money for their coins, and they can't even possibly get a deal done. And they always talk about it every time we go in, because at these shows, locally here in Sacramento, I probably know about 75% of the dealers. And even the ones that you probably don't want to do business with because of, how far out of line they are in the market. So when you look at all of these things that I have told you here, ladies and gentlemen, is that you need to be more diligent, especially when you have more money to spend to your investment portfolio of coins. You got to be mindful that the dealer network is not going to be congruent all the way across the board. We have this dealer that has a coin that I wanted for $1,500, but when we go online, they're trading at, $800, $900, $1,000, I could stretch out to his money and buy a mid-stage 64 plus for that kind of money. And it just goes to show you that, this is where some people get stung. And it's not only the traveling dealers, ladies and gentlemen, that could be that. It could be a dealer on Whatnot. It could be a few dealers on eBay. We've seen this, right? There's a wide variety of different dealers of different price points of all the same coins. You just have to you have to filter through all the gunk to get to the ones that you could trust, and that's why there's feedback scores and things like that. So the scrupulous high price shit, that dreck, exists all across the various platforms. Okay, there's no one platform that's squeaky clean. And I get people all the time who are like, "Oh, that Whatnot, I can't trust that platform." I'm like, on what basis? You've never joined it. You're taking like third-hand information that's been passed around like 4 or 5 times because they've had a bad experience, but not everyone does. Everyone has bad experiences on eBay. Everyone has bad experiences at local dealers, at national dealers, big coin shows, eBay Live. So, at the end of the day, that's really on you. When you don't put any effort whatsoever in the educational aspect of it, you will get burned, right? It's the same way as going into this hobby. Going into it blind is a fool's game, man. I'm telling you, you are going to get effed over if you get into this hobby thinking you have it all figured out. And that's kind of like the primary reason why that people think the "in COD we trust" quarter is an actual thing. Those idiots, couldn't even find, their way to the bathroom at night. They just can't. They are about as blind as the bat that's outside every night. And that's scary. That's scary because those same very people, they're the ones that are they're toxic enough to get themselves into a position where they got royally screwed over, and then they're going to badmouth that one person all across the lands. When, it could be the dealer's fault, but it could also be the consumer's fault. The one X factor that never gets talked about is education, research. You do all of this, and you'll do just fine. Being in this hobby is more so 95% education and research as it is the act of buying and pulling money out of your wallet to purchase something. You have to know. You have to know what's going around right now. There are people even to this day that aren't privy to the fact that the precious metals market tanked the last few days. And it's just now kind of like stabling in a little bit. That's scary. There are people that are still paying $40 per Silver Eagle, and it's like, well, it dropped $5, in the last few days. How about we slow down here and really get to know where we're at? And it's going to be those same people that 2 years down the road, they need to sell these Silver Eagles to a coin shop, and then they have to, they have to badmouth the other dealer, and they have to say, well, I got screwed on this one. I'm like, yeah, well, you made your bed. Now you have to sleep in it. So that's what I want to talk about. I know it's kind of like all over the place, but this is one of those instances where, you also have to you also have to do your own, personal checks and balances, even with the dealer network. Because dealers, they have this kind of like facade of being squeaky clean and know-it-alls. But there are some dealers, and we've seen it also on the news, where they screw over people, doing these kind of like pyramid scheme, invest in gold type stuff. And, here, I'll grade your coins. They end up selling the coins to, rob Paul to pay Peter type scenarios. And it's like, man, you really got to not put yourself in that position. Because there's so much money flowing in this business. Money can be lost at any given time and no one would care. But you would care because it's yours. So that's what I want to talk about in this. Just be careful out there, guys. Always do your research with the dealer, with your pricing, with the coins. Exhaust all your options at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, you don't have to spend $1. 1 red cent. No. You can put that money aside until the ideal situation comes up for you. I'm your host, Sean, with Blue Ridge Silver Hound. I'm all choked up. Thank you guys again for tuning in on this one. Hopefully you got a few takeaways. It was awfully ranty, and I do apologize about that. I will see you guys later. Have fun in the hobby. Keep on collecting, and I'll see you later.